Hi, in this video we begin our look at how we factorize algebraic expressions. Now, an expression is said to be factorized, that is in factor form, if it's a product of two or more other expressions. Here's an example. Let's suppose we have the expression MCD plus, let's say, CMH. Now, this is a sum of two expressions. Each of these, yes, is a product, but that's not the important thing. The main thing here is that this is a sum of two expressions. What we want is a product. So the easiest way to do this is to simply find the greatest common factor in both of these expressions. And in this case, it's easy. It's going to be M and C. Here it's C and M, but that's the same thing. So I can write MC. And then what I have to do is say, well, MC times what will give me MCD? And of course, that should be D. And then we want to know, well, MC times what will give me MCH? And of course, that's H. Now you need to recognize that this is a product of two expressions. This being one of them, and this being the other. True, in here you have a sum, but that is not what we're focusing on. Here we have a product of two expressions. Here we had a sum of two expressions. So this is factorized. And so that's basically what we'll be doing. And this method that we're using, well, it employs the distributive law. And to do so, we have to factor out the greatest common factor. So let's take a look and see what we mean by the greatest common factor. When we talk about the greatest common factor, what we're looking at, what we're talking about is, well, let's say we have two numbers. Let's say we have 24 and let's say 36. So the factors of 24 are 1 and of course 24. And so I'll just write the 24 over here for right now. And then 2 and 12, 3 and, well, 8, 4 and 6. And then the next one will be 6. So none, we have these already. So that's why I wrote them here, so I don't have to go through all of that again. 6, 8, 12 and 24. Now, what are the factors of 36? Well, we have 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, 5, 6 and 6 itself, and then we end up with 9. So then we go 9, 12, 18, and 36. So these are the factors of 24. These are the factors of 36. What factors do these two numbers have in common? Well, we have 1, 2, 3. So they have many factors in common. 4, 6. 8 is not in common. 12 is. And of course 24 is not in common, neither is 9 common to both, nor 18 nor 36. So you have all these common factors. Now which is the greatest? Well, obviously 12. So this is what we mean by the greatest common factor. It's the number that can divide evenly into both 24 and 36. But it's the greatest number, it's the biggest number, the largest number that can divide both into 24 and 36. Sometimes the greatest common factor will be 1. So for example, if I have the numbers 7 and 13, what are the factors of 7 and 13? Well, 1 and 7. The factors of 13 are 1 and 13. And so the greatest common factor of 7 and 13 is 1. So far we've been working with numbers and finding the greatest common factor of two numbers. But this is algebra and we need to be able to find the greatest common factor of expressions. So let's start with two basic expressions. Let's start with b squared and b to the 5th power. What are the factors of b squared? Well, 1 and 1 goes into b squared how many times? Well, b squared times 1 times b squared is b squared. b goes into b squared how many times? B. So b times b gives b squared. And of course then we're left with b squared. So these are the factors of b squared. Let's look at the factors of b to the 5th. So you have 1, b, and of course b times b to the 4th gives us b to the 5th. We have b squared, and of course b squared times b cubed gives us b to the 5th. And I forgot to mention, but 1 times b to the 5th also gives us b to the 5th. So these are all factors. So the factors then are 1b, b squared, b to the 3rd power, b to the 4th power, and b to the 5th power, which is the greatest of the factors in common. So the factors in common are 1, b, and b squared. And obviously b squared is the greatest common factor. So this is actually easier than working with numbers. If I have, let's say, c to the 6th power and c to the 2nd power, what's the greatest common factor? C squared. And that's a 2. If I have d to the 8th power and d to the 3rd power, what's the greatest common factor? D cubed. So if I have these two expressions, the one with the smaller exponent is the greatest common factor of these two, provided they have the same base. Here we have a more formal definition of the greatest common factor of a set of algebraic expressions. And it is the greatest collection or product of factors that is common to all expressions. So that is what we have been saying. So let's look at a few examples. So let's find the GCF of these three expressions here. So to do this, we simply find the GCF of 70, 84, and 42, and that is the number 7. So you should do that on your own if you need to verify that. And of x squared, x, and x cubed, well then it's simply x. So easy. And now, what's the greatest common factor of these three expressions? Well, we have 60, 140, and 40. Well, the greatest common factor of those numbers is 20. There's no bigger number that divides evenly into 40, 140, and 60. And then for the a squares, for the a's, well, the greatest common factor is a squared. And for the b's, well, there's no b here, so the greatest common factor does not include the b. Let's apply what we've just discussed and factorize some polynomials. So this first one, what's the greatest common factor here? Well, 10 and 20, the greatest common factor is 10. And then we have what? Well, that's it. We have x squared minus 2y squared. Check. 10 times x squared gives us 10x squared. 10 times a minus 2y squared gives us minus 20y squared. Now, for this one, the greatest common factors are w and well, we need the GCF of 28 and 42, which is 14, and then w, and that leaves us with 3z plus 2a. So check. 14 times 3, 42, w times z. 14 times 2, 28, w times a. So we have this one factorized. So for this one now, the greatest common factor is, well, for the numbers it's 6, and then for the x's, well, it's just x. And so that gives us here x squared minus 2x and then plus 3. Let's check. 6x squared, 6x times x squared is 6x cubed. 6x times 2x, that's 12x squared. And 6x times 3 is 18x. And now we have this one to do. The greatest common factor, let's start with the numbers. 44 and 110, that's 22. And then for the x's, it's going to be x to the 6th. And for the y's, it's going to be y to the 6th. Make sure you understand this, right? This is y to the 6th, y to the 9. The greatest common factor of the y's is, of y to the 6th and y to the 9th is y to the 6th. And then z. So we discussed this just a few moments ago. And then that leaves us with, well, 2x squared. Let's check. That's 44, x to the 8, y to the 6, z, and then minus. And then what do we need here to get 110? 5. And then we have the x to the 6th already. So what we need is y to the 3rd power. and just z, so we get z squared afterwards. Let's check it. 22 times 5 is 110, x to the 6, y to the 9, z squared. So that's it. We have factorized these four. So okay, so that's it for this video.